All right, we have another Pandemic Baseball Book Club interview. I'm Jacob Kornhauser, joined by Dale Tafoya, the author of the new book, Billy Ball, right here, all about Billy Martin and his hometown Oakland A's. Dale, how you doing?
Doing great, Jacob. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed going through the book and kind of, that era in A's history. And I was really interested to know kind of when this idea got you and kind of how long it's been ruminating and how long it took from idea seed to the actual fruition of it getting published.
Yeah, great question, Jacob. I was diving into the bowels of Oakland A's history in 2018. Right. And if you really dive deep into history and just put a microscope to things, there's a lot of books and great stories if you really put a magnifying glass to history. So when I was researching the story, I saw the 1979 A's. They were called the Oakland Pathetics, the Triple A's, baseball's boat people for their lack of stability. And they drew only less than 307,000 fans for a season attendance. They lost 108 games. The A's were very much in limbo at the time. They were a baseball crisis. And then by 1982, the A's had drawn 1.7 million fans. And 1981, of course, the A's were featured on the front cover of Time magazine and Sports Illustrated. So there was this 3-year renaissance that I wanted to capture. And as I studied the renaissance, Billy Martin, the A's manager, was clearly the difference maker. And to capture this story, I said, okay, this is a book proposal. So I put the book proposal together, and this capturing this great Oakland Renaissance required me to study Billy Martin. I didn't go into this thing, hey, I'm going to write a book about Billy Martin, but capturing this Renaissance accurately required me to study this fascinating manager named Billy Martin.
Right, and I thought it was interesting how it's almost three-pronged, where it's almost a Billy Martin biography within, a certain time period, Oakland A's within themselves, and then the city of Oakland itself. So how did you kind of mesh those three things together to, tell a cohesive story that really told all three of those stories?
Right, and Billy Martin was really a fun era in Oakland. There was a lot of hit running, and Ricky Henderson was there. Of course, we know the pitchers were stacking complete games, but the story really provided context to the situation. And it started in 1977 after many of Charlie Finley's players bolted for free agency. And that's what really got the A's, it made the A's into this baseball crisis. It was free agency. Right. Charlie Finley, the great innovative owner that really brought a lot of revolutionary ideas to the game of baseball, just couldn't afford free agency. And he was operating the A's on a shoestring budget. So I brought into context from 1977 to 1982. That's what kind of the book covers. And it was just an incredible time. And it was really just a book about really Oakland baseball history. It's not only just about the wins on the field and what the players did. It was just the crowds that started pouring in after Billy Martin got there. It's about Oakland politicians. Former Oakland Mayor Lionel Wilson makes an appearance. Robert Nahas, who was a political figure in Oakland that was really an ambassador to build in Oakland. In fact, Nahas was the one that encouraged lured Finley from Kansas City to move the A's to Oakland in 1968. So just to really provide context, but once again, it's not just a story about wins. It's a story about the Oakland political climate and fighting to keep their A's in Oakland, while Al Davis's Raiders were eyeing a new location in Southern California.
Yeah, where did your research start for everything? This was obviously a very research-heavy book, impressive in terms of, just the detail it's written in. So where did you start when you knew that you were going to be telling kind of this full-fledged long-form story?
Well, it started in, like I said, 1977. And, of course, the Billy Martin era in Oakland was 3 years. He was hired by Charlie Finley on February 21st, 1980 at the Drake Hotel in Chicago, because Charlie Finley didn't renew his $200 business license. So it was held in Chicago. So just to really make anything book length and book worthy, you have to provide context. So in order for me to really stretch this thing in the book, I had to cover between 1977 to 1980, before Billy got there, what condition the A's were in, but also provide readers who are not really familiar with Billy Martin. In fact, a lot of A's fans that maybe not be familiar that intimately with Billy Martin, I kind of gave them a context of Billy Martin's whole career, not only as a player, but as a manager, leading up to when he was hired by the A's in 1980.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about kind of the connection he had with fans? You know, he's obviously a very sort of blue-collar player during his playing career, blue-collar sort of coach, and obviously Oakland, a community that's kind of similar in that way. So that jumped out to me in terms of his kind of deep connection with the fans. Can you talk about what you found?
Yeah, well, Billy Martin was a hometown boy. He was a Bay Area boy that was born in nearby Berkeley, and he sparked an Oakland renaissance in 1948 as well as a member of the Oakland Oaks. And that's where he met his mentor, Casey Stengel. And after Casey's nice run with the Oakland Oaks, the Yankees lured him to manage their team, and Casey Stengel went on just an unprecedented run, winning championships with the Yankees, and he was the one who brought Billy Martin from that Oaks team to New York. And even as Billy finished his career with the Yankees, won some world championships, and he finished his playing career with the Minnesota Twins. And he held on as a coach with the Twins a few years in the 60s, but he was very well aware, and I tell people this, that Charlie Finley was going to move his A's franchise to his hometown in Oakland. And it always intrigued him to return to manage that Oakland team. And also, Billy Martin was an American League guy. He really didn't like the National League. He was an American League guy, so he was proud of the fact that he was able to manage his Oakland A's in that 1980 season. And also, Billy Martin knew what was at stake. He knew the A's were operating on a shoestring budget. He knew the A's could possibly move to Denver. He went there trying to save Oakland A's baseball, and ultimately he helped it. He helped do that.
Right. And I mean, you talked a lot about relocation with both the A's and kind of the relocation landscape in baseball during that time, which was pretty illuminating for me. A lot of the details I didn't even realize. Can you talk about sort of the most interesting thing that you found in doing the research with relocation, maybe stuff that you didn't know going in?
Yeah, well, I think in history, some people know that the A's were on the verge of being moved to Denver in the late 70s. On December 14th, 1977, Jacob, Marvin Davis, an oil tycoon who had all the money in the world. I mean, he had his own independent oil business. And he announced that day that he had purchased the team from Charlie Finley for $12.5 million, and he was going to move the A's to Denver. And the A's was going to play the 1978 season at Mile High Stadium. They had refurbished the season. The fans in Denver, Jacob, thought it was a done deal. They were celebrating. They were ready for the A's to move there. But the problem for Finley and for Denver fans is that Charlie Finley signed a 20-year ironclad lease when he came to Oakland. So Finley and his A's were essentially shackled in Oakland till 1987. So although the announcement for the sale took place, the Oakland officials would not let Finley out of that lease. And a lot of the great context of that story is captured in the book, one chapter called Baseball's Boat People. Right.
And so Billy Martin, we talked about kind of his connection with fans. Obviously, he clashed more with front offices. He sort of, obviously, you know, the fans and the front offices are looking at it from two different perspectives. Can you talk about kind of that juxtaposition of beloved by fans, but usually he would wear on front offices just with, you know, the way he was?
Yeah, great question. And you're right. Billy Martin, Jacob, just had this connection with the working class fans. They love Billy Martin. He was a guy that you'd want to fight for you. You'd want in your corner. Some players love Billy Martin, some didn't. A lot of the players I talked to love how when he would go out there and bump an umpire or kick dirt on an umpire or or create a scene and yell at an umpire. A lot of players appreciated that because he was fighting for them.
Right.
And I mean, he had such a connection with the working class, really in every city he managed, from the Twins, from the Detroit Tigers. Then he went on to resurrect Texas Rangers baseball, and owners really had to take into consideration the fans before firing Billy Martin. Billy Martin, it would rub him the wrong way when some of his bosses, the GMs and owners, didn't know baseball like he did. And he would always say, I know more than them. And it would lead to battles. And so, but when owners fired Billy Martin, these fans would protest. When Calvin Griffith, owner of the Twins, fired Billy Martin, fans put "We want Billy back" bumper stickers in all of their cars. And they really had to take into consideration the fans. And even when Steinbrenner, when Billy Martin was forced to resign in 1978 from the Yankees, the fans flooded the Yankee lines and said, "No, we want Billy back. We want Billy back." And that's when Steinbrenner said, "Okay, Billy Martin's going to return to manage the 1980 Yankees." See, the plan was for Billy Martin to manage the 1980 Yankees, but then he got in the altercation with the marshmallow salesman in Minnesota in October of 1979, and that didn't happen.
I found the marshmallow salesman thing very funny.
Right.
I did not know that was a job that existed at that point. But can you talk about the nuance in the Steinbrenner-Billy Martin relationship? Because I think it's relatively well known, kind of the friction that was there, maybe some of the affinity that was there, but you obviously document, both the good and the bad. And it seems like it was a very unique relationship.
Yeah, it was very unique. It was like they couldn't live with each other, but they couldn't live without each other. And both of them, Billy Martin and Steinbrenner, just seemed like they were addicted to each other. George Steinbrenner, if Billy Martin didn't pass away in December of 1989, George Steinbrenner was going to bring him back a sixth time. They just had this love-hate relationship, but they had each other's back. I mean, publicly, they would support each other, and when it came down to it, they loved working with each other, and they were just addicted to that partnership. And whenever Steinbrenner felt his Yankees needed a spark or were in a rut, his go-to guy was the Miracle Man, Billy Martin's name, because when he came to a city, he would immediately resurrect the team and bring a revival to the city. He wouldn't last long, and that's what he did in New York. And that they just had this love-hate relationship, but they had this addiction to each other. And although this was a great story about Billy Martin resurrecting the A's, he was addicted to the Yankees, clearly.
Right.
But it's a fun story about Billy Martin helping save his hometown franchise, the A's.
Exactly. And I mean, while he was there and obviously elsewhere, he had this sort of cult of personality about him that we don't really see nowadays. Do you have any kind of theories on, why we're seeing fewer and fewer managers that are sort of the star of the team? I feel like we saw that a lot more kind of in Billy's day, and he was definitely the personification of
that. Yeah, and it's a great question, Jacob. And a few of the reviewers who reviewed my book said it's an intriguing book because you're exactly right. A lot of managers are just figureheads these days. They're there and they get the orders from the top. They get the computer printouts to see the matchups. And as you know, the computers, sabermetrics has a huge role in how the game is played and how the game is prepared. And Billy Martin, he was this daring guy, a face of a franchise. He was the drawing card. I mean, he was the face of the Oakland A's. He was on the front cover of Time magazine in 1981. The Haas family, the great owners who purchased the team in 1980, they gave Billy Martin the keys to the kingdom. They made him not only he was already the manager, they made him essentially the GM. He had a lot of power, and there's really not a lot of managers today that are even allowed to just shake up a whole outlook of a team. And just he made this A's team into his own image, this fiery, aggressive team. And not a lot we don't see that a lot in today's baseball. So you're exactly right, Jacob.
Are there any if you had to pick out maybe one manager, either active or, recently retired, kind of the recent past, is there anyone who kind of resembles that cult of personality that you can think of?
Oh, wow. I can't think of any at the top. You can always compare Billy Barton to the Earl Weaver, Sparky Andersons.
Right.
I don't see a lot of those managers. And, some managers, if Major League Baseball is really clamping down on ejections and managers making scenes, there's probably a lot of pressure not to make a scene and argue your case with an umpire and just trot back to the dugout. Billy Martin would bump umpires, and that's what made him such a drawing card. Fans would come because Billy Martin was so unpredictable. You'd love when he'd come out to come out of the dugout and kick dirt on an umpire and create a. It was fun. It was Billy Ball.
Yeah, I think Lou Piniella would be the only one that would come to mind for me in terms of just like a semi-recent guy who's kind of in that similar vein. I also thought it was interesting how you touched on, Billy Martin, scrappy player, ends up being obviously an effective manager at several different spots. I think it does endorse this idea that, star players usually aren't the best managers, but kind of those role players usually are. Can you talk about kind of maybe how his playing career, as you talk about it, informed the way that he managed teams?
Right, and it's not only his playing career conditioned him and prepared him to manage, is his upbringing in West Berkeley. He grew up after the Depression there. He would, in order for him to play baseball at James Caney Park, that local field in Berkeley, he had to fight to be able to compete on the diamonds. So he was conditioned to fight at an early age, and Billy Martin knew how to fight because he got in so many fights. Right. And so that shaped how he became a player, and just that aggressiveness and the feistiness. And what made him so good as a manager, Jacob, is that he relentlessly put pressure on the defense. He frustrated managers like Sparky Anderson and Jim Fregosi so much because he would keep them on their toes. He would keep them guessing. He would put the hit and run on, and the runner at first base would intentionally fall to the ground in the middle of first and second, and they would create a rundown between third base and home, and the runner at third would dash home safe. So he just constantly put pressure on the defense and just kept them guessing, and that's what made him effective in Oakland.
And you talk in the book about the ad campaign about Billy Ball, obviously trying to boil down the exact style that you're talking about, and obviously the title of the book. What were some of the coolest things that you found in researching that ad campaign? Because I would imagine you had to go through some archives and different stuff like that, to supplement that section of the book. So what were some of the cool things you found in that?
Well, yeah, the Oakland A's hired an advertising giant, Ogilvy in Mather in 1981 after the Haas family purchased the team. 1981 was the Haas family's first season, and they were just pouring tons of money into the A's. They were building the A's up again. They were putting tons of money into the A's scouting and farm system. And this Ogilvy in Mather, thanks to marketing genius Andy Dolich, who was with the A's, created this Billy Ball campaign. It's a different brand of baseball, and this campaign was built on Billy Martin. And they were just brochures. And I was a kid when Billy Ball was going on here in the Bay Area, and there was just bumper stickers, brochures, billboards of Billy Martin everywhere. Billy Martin, he could have been the mayor of Oakland. He was everywhere, and that advertising campaign, Billy Ball, also features some award-winning funny commercials. And you'll see a lot of these commercials on YouTube where, for the first time, athletes are acting funny in front of the camera. It's funny dialogue. So before Nike's Michael Jordan Just Do It ads, and then the Nike's Bo Knows ads, the popular Bo Jackson ads, there was this advertising campaign, Billy Ball, that really was a trailblazer for everything else in sports entertainment. So just incredible, this Billy Ball campaign, and it personified the success of the A's. And by 1981, the A's were just a pop culture phenomenon and just America's team because of this renaissance. And people say, well, the A's never went to the World Series. It wasn't a resurrection. But trust me, in real time, the discussion was a resurrection in 1981, though that was the vernacular. So Yeah, it was just an incredible Billy Ball campaign.
I mean, it is crazy the context, though, of, 79, they're the worst team in baseball and kind of, obviously about to move out of town, basically. And then within 2 years, they had the best record in baseball in 81, even though they didn't get to the World Series. Kind of that wonky year where, a bunch of teams that maybe should have made the playoffs didn't, and a bunch of teams that shouldn't have made the playoffs did, and just very weird with the strike year and everything. But I know that we alluded to it at the top, but do you think that Oakland would still have the A's if Billy Martin didn't come into the fold in 1980?
That it's doubtful, Jacob, because the question is, would Walter A. Haas Jr., the chairman of Levi Strauss, he purchased the team in August of 1980. He purchased the team 3 months after Billy Martin got there. Would he have purchased the team, would the Haas family still purchase the team without the excitement Billy Martin brought? I highly doubt it. I mean, the Haas family they were around in the late 70s. They could have purchased the A's then. They knew Charlie Finley was selling the club. They did not purchase the team till Billy Martin arrived and created this renaissance in Oakland. And in 1980, Billy Martin's first year managing the team, they didn't go to the playoffs. They finished in second place, but it was still it was a great renaissance, and they went from drawing less than 307,000 in 1979 to over 800,000 in 1980. Billy Martin tripled attendance, and Roy Eisenhart, who eventually became the president of the A's, he remembered watching Billy Martin in New York. Roy Eisenhart was from New York, so there was that connection as well. So yeah, it's doubtful any owner would have stepped up and kept the A's in Oakland during that time if it wasn't for Billy Martin creating that baseball renaissance to increase the value so Finley could unload the franchise to an owner who was going to solidify their stay in Oakland.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. There's very few managers that you can think of sort of in the course of baseball history that you can directly point to and, say they probably saved baseball in a particular city. And for it to be in his hometown, it's pretty
right.
Cool.
Exactly. And Billy Martin did the same thing in Texas. He saved Texas baseball in 1974 with Billy's turnaround gang. So yeah. Two franchises this guy saved.
There's another book I think called Seasons in Hell or something like that about how terrible the Rangers were, and then like you talked about, Billy Martin came in and saved the day. For you as a Bay Area kid who kind of lived through this, how rewarding was this to put this together and really both build on your knowledge that you already had and that you kind of lived through, learn some new things, but also tell this story to everyone else of something they maybe didn't know existed and that you lived through?
Yeah, it's fun because after I got this book deal, I kept it very private. Right. And when you're an author, sometimes it's smart not to show your hand. Because then you'll have people sometimes that will sabotage your work or say, hey, don't talk to him. So I kept it very quiet until the book actually came out. But I knew I had the hand. I had the book proposal. I knew it was going to be an interesting book, and being following the A's for so many years, you don't hear that Billy Martin saved the franchise. You didn't hear that his arrival was significant enough to compel the Haas family to purchase the team and save them in Oakland. So I wanted to touch on that. And I even think when people got the book or heard about the book coming out, some may have been skeptical and said, "Resurrection? What's this about?" Billy Martin? No, seriously, because this era hasn't really been documented before. Right. So, but I knew I had the hand, and it just worked out great. And now people are reading it and saying, "Wow, okay, it is true." And it's not like I'm making it up. I came into this project very objective, and here's the evidence of what happened. And I'm pretty pleased how it was captured in the book. Right.
What's been the thing that readers have been the most surprised by in terms of this era, maybe Billy Martin in general, that you've heard feedback from that they maybe didn't know before reading the book?
Well, I think a lot of how I get into depth of how the A's were on the verge of going to Denver. Right. Some people have heard they were going to Denver, and you'd hear it, you would, okay, that was a possibility. But I create in the book where they were headed to Denver if it wasn't for this lease. The Denver fans were waiting for the A's to come, and it was there was a 3-year window where they could have went. So, and also in order for the A's to go to Denver, Bob Lurie, the owner of the Giants, Lee McPhail, the American League president, Marvin Davis, the oil tycoon in Denver, and Charlie Finley were putting a package together to buy so the Oakland city officials can say, okay, give us this money and we'll release you. But they were never able to do that. Also, part of this agreement, Jacob, was the Giants were going to play 35 to 40 games at the Oakland Coliseum to release the A's, and I don't know if anybody knew that. It wasn't for my research. So that whole dynamic, I think, has opened some eyes. That history there that I was able to bring out in the book.
Right. Yeah, I can't imagine many Giants fans would have been super pleased with that outcome if that had been the case. Is there anything else that you find it super important for people to know, maybe in either considering to get the book or just to know about the book in general that we haven't touched on?
Yeah, I just think that it was just a great renaissance in baseball history, and it was a franchise-saving renaissance. And I think that I was able to just learn about Billy Martin as a leader. Owners wouldn't bring in Billy Martin for a rebuild. Right. When you bring in Billy Martin, he was going to pour his soul into winning immediately. But he didn't have a lot of shelf life in the city. Right. It would last, maybe the first 2 years would be good. But yeah, one thing I want to touch on is the attendance. That was like I say, it wasn't just about the wins. It was the significance of the resurrection, saving the A's. But by 1982, Billy's final year managing the A's had drawn over 1.7 million. In 1981, they drew 1.3 million, and that was minus 22 games erased by the strike, 81 strike. Right. So it was just an attendance revival in Oakland as well. And also by 1982, from the AAAs, after the 1982 season, Baseball America crowned the A's the organization of the year, and it took into consideration the whole body of work of the organization as a whole. And all 6 of the A's minor league teams in 1982 were in first place. In 1979, the A's farm system was bankrupt. So and a lot came into play. It was Billy Martin. Charlie Finley hired Walt Jocketty to run their scouting department. Then the Haas family came in and just poured money into the operation. So that kind of sticks out, Jacob.
And if you had to kind of overall summarize, Billy Martin's lasting legacy in Oakland, obviously, like you said, he had a short shelf life basically everywhere he went. He spent 3 years there as manager, was from the area, really resurrected baseball there, as you mentioned in the book as well, played with the Oakland Oaks. So with all that considered, even with his sort of short but brilliant shelf life with the A's, what would you kind of boil it down to if you had to, and kind of a short summary of his time in Oakland?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a very significant time, and he created this revival when the A's franchise was on life support.
Right.
And again, he knew what was at stake when he took on that Oakland team. He knew they could be going to Denver. He knew they were a baseball crisis, and he went there. And there's quotes in the book with him saying, "I know I'm going to bring back fans to Oakland. I'm going to bring them back." And that's exactly what he did. 1982, Jacob, was just a miserable year. Some of the pitchers' arms, they got injured. Yep. He tore up his office at the end. It was bad. And what happens is sometimes Martin gets bored, and he'll go to the next city. He was like an evangelist or a crusader who would come to a city, resurrect it, and go to the next city after that. And the A's were really struggling on the field in 1982, Jacob. And when the team is struggling, that's when Billy Martin loses interest. Billy Martin was a ferocious competitor and a hard loser, very hard loser. So what happens is his team loses, he loses interest, the team loses, he gets frustrated, and he gets on players. And he may do things to really piss players off, and that's what sometimes they tune him out or turn on him. And it's time to go to the next city. And after the A's fired him during the 1982 World Series, Steinbrenner brought him back to manage the 1983 Yankees, and that's what happened. And he fed into his addiction to the Yankees.
Right. Truly unique guy. Truly unique kind of time in baseball history. Again, Billy Ball, what we're talking about, where can people find the book, or where would you point them toward?
Boy, it's online everywhere. You can Google Billy Ball, and all kinds of outlets will show up. It's also part of the Great Pandemic Book Club, so I'm excited about that. The great alliance we have with great authors. So it's also on the Pandemic Book Club site too. So excited about it. And for me, I'm just excited, Jacob. I was able to get this story out. And some people say, "Oh man, what bad timing, man! It came out right when this virus hit." No. I was just happy that it was printed. This story was printed and published before this virus wiped it out. Because I'm sure there are a lot of authors who had their projects lined up that this virus probably either destroyed it or postponed it. So I try to be positive, and that's just kind of my perspective on it all.
Absolutely. Hopefully people are checking out lots of baseball books. As you mentioned, Pandemic Baseball Book Club, kind of all of our books are on there, and plenty of discussions of other authors as well. But definitely check out Billy Ball, because it's a good one. I read through it, and as someone a little bit younger who didn't live through that, it was really illuminating to kind of learn some of that new stuff.
Great. Awesome. Well, I'm glad. I look forward to interviewing you soon too for your
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.